And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Around the Bases with Bubba and Mo. Episode 35. Going to recap the League Championship Series and preview the World Series. But as many of you who listened last week realized, Mo is not here this week as he is on his honeymoon. So I have a special co-host filling in for Mo this week. You can find him on Twitter at Casey Boguslaw. Casey, how we doing?
I'm doing great, Bubba. Thanks for having me, and I'm happy to fill in for Mo.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I had a great time with you on the Benched with Bubba podcast we did, talking barrels and everything, and figured we should do it again. So here we are on a different format, but we're doing it all over again. Let's get into a couple of the coaching hires and whatnot before we get into the recap of the League Championship Series. In the last week, Dusty Baker, going into the division series, the Nats loved him. They wanted to keep him, and now he's gone. What are your thoughts on Dusty being gone? Because I was surprised how mixed the reactions actually were.
I'm interested to hear your opinion, but I don't think they were all that mixed, really. I thought they were very pro Dusty, like he should have kept his job, and that shocked me. A lot of smart baseball people who, as pro analytic people as there are on Twitter, were very shocked and very surprised and thought Dusty got a raw deal. And the other thing, I guess this is all just semantics, but everyone was saying, I can't believe Dusty Baker was fired. First of all, he wasn't fired. He just wasn't brought back. So that I think that is a different. You got to put those things in two different columns. But no, I thought I would have been surprised if he was brought back, and I would have been just spitting out vitriol on Twitter if they did bring him back, because I thought that would have been the wrong choice, just because I don't really think Dusty Baker's a great manager, and I know that I'm in the minority in that thought. I just don't think he does a great job. I was living in Chicago during his Cubs tenure and didn't what he did in San Francisco before that. I remember what he did in Cincinnati, and I don't think he did that great of a job in Washington. Yeah, you can say that he had 90 some odd wins both years there, but Bubba, I think me or you could win 90 plus games with Bryce Harper, Max Scherzer, and Steven Strasburg.
That there it is right there. I am anti Dusty Baker, so I was thrilled by this. Absolutely thrilled by this. I've each week we've recorded during the playoffs, I basically had a Dusty Baker ranting moment because he's made some of the dumbest decisions over and over again. And like you said, I witnessed it firsthand in 2002 when he could not remove.
Oh, right, yeah.
Like I was furious with him then, and he kept getting jobs and jobs and jobs. So I was very happy when they made this move because I was shocked, like I said, before the series when they said, oh, yeah, we want to give him a 2-year extension, all of this. I couldn't figure that out for the life of me, what they wanted. But it's crazy that A, he keeps getting a job, and B, you have a Nats team, like you said, that's just loaded with talent. Like we could have gone out there and done that. The crazy part is they're going to be unloading that talent here pretty soon because they're going to be free agents retiring, whatever, in a couple more years. And Bryce Harper has only been in the league like a handful of years now, and I believe now he's already had 4 managers. Like they can't even keep a manager on staff for this guy. I don't know. It's crazy. The Nationals, for as much talent as they put together, maybe one of the worst run organizations in baseball. It's the way they do it. I can't figure it out.
And here's the argument that I do want to address directly is the argument that Dusty Baker was fired because he couldn't win a playoff series, and people were saying, that the playoffs are a completely random circumstance, and once you get in, anything can happen. That is absolutely true, and that's not the point. I don't think Dusty Baker is fired because he lost the NLDS 2 years in a row. I think he is fired because he didn't put them in the best situation to win. Yes, and I was shouting from the rooftops on Twitter that Cubs and National Series was going to be as tight as possible. I thought both teams were extremely talented. I thought it was definitely going 5, and lo and behold, it basically went down to the last at bat of a 5-game series. Dusty Baker was not fired because he lost to the Cubs, but I think that he could have put them in a better situation, and I think that somebody, I guess Mike Rizzo wanted to keep him, and it was ownership that ultimately made the decision. But you said you went on your rants. I'm sure you covered Bryce or Jason Worth hitting second shouldn't be happening. Jason Worth shouldn't be hitting left field or shouldn't be playing left field in the late innings with the lead. That just can't happen. And we have too much information to know that that is not the smart baseball move in a late inning situation, especially in the postseason. That should be a automatic substitution in the regular season, let alone the postseason. So, and there were other, decisions made along the way. I don't blame him for bringing in Scherzer or anything like that. But, it's not that he lost 3 of those 5 games, because that could have happened to, that's not what he was. It's everything else that kind of built up to that. The Nationals, the number 1 seed, was even within reach, towards the end of the season. And who knows what a different manager could have gotten. They could have caught the Dodgers, because like we've both addressed, that team had a bunch of talent. There's no reason that they should be, they should be a 100-win ball club. And it'll be interesting who they bring in there next and see. Of course, the other comparison is that he did better than Matt Williams. Well, Matt Williams was probably even worse than Dusty. So, I guess we'll see who they bring in next. But they're obviously in a situation where they're going to most likely succeed.
Yeah, they'll succeed. And the last point here is I agree. It wasn't that they lost to the Cubs. I think it's more the manner of how he lost to the Cubs and the manner he's lost in big games over and over again. Like, you can point to I guarantee if we sit back and watch all 5 games, we can pick 2 to 3 things almost in every game that if you just look at numbers and look at trends and this was the wrong decision. I go back to the bullpen usage late in game 3. They should have won game 3, and that would changes everything. So it's crazy with him.
Any decision could have changed the series, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, but let's go to the Red Sox. I know we'll talk a lot more about this next week when Mo gets back, because that's his ball club.
Okay.
But they actually made it official today, as official as they can, without signing paperwork. Alex Cora is going to be the new manager of the Red Sox. It's an interesting move. Not saying it's not a deserved move, but it's interesting. What are your thoughts on Alex Cora?
Well, this is another situation where the team is – this is not a rebuilding team. This is a team that's ready to contend. So – Alex Cora is going to go into a situation where he's expected to win the division and he's expected to make the playoffs, and he doesn't have MLB managing experience. I think that's going to be the first point that we want to bring up. He has done, different things managing. I don't know if it was minor leagues, but he managed in the WBC. I know that he's done that, and I think he's done some other international play stuff. He's a bright mind, and he's worked with some very, very smart people. He's coming from the Astros, who are as analytically inclined as anyone in MLB, so he knows what he's doing. My awesome plug that I want to bring up regarding Alex Cora is, I believe now we can say that there is one MLB manager following the MLB Barrel Alert account, and that is Alex Cora. So
it's awesome.
He's smart enough to know which Twitter accounts to follow. So I'm happy just to be able to make that claim now.
That's awesome. If you guys don't know what an MLB Barrel account is, you need to go check that out. Pretty awesome stuff. Casey basically created this monster of a barrel account. It's awesome for the season, so check that out. But that I did not know he followed you. That's really awesome.
Yeah, we have one manager now. We actually have one that I know of, one MLB player. Maybe, I don't know if this might be too hard to just quiz you, but I will say that he is on one of the World Series teams, although I don't think he's on the roster. He's borderline World Series roster eligible.
You're not talking about Corey Seager, are you?
No, not that, not that high established. He's a rookie.
Oh, a rookie that might make the Fisher?
Yes, sir.
That's awesome.
He follows the MLB Barrel Alert account as well.
It's going to keep growing, Casey. It's going to keep growing. That's awesome. Yeah, no, the Cora signing, I like it. He's one of those player managers I could potentially see. He's still relatively new to the coaching structure, but because he's been on the field more recent than a lot of the guys that were looking to get hired. But the experience is there. He's been a bench coach for some very qualified teams. I don't hate it at all. Like you said, they're going to need someone that's going to come in with a veteran / it's like the Red Sox are odd. It's like they have half veteran, half young team. It's a really interesting nucleus they've had going over there. So you bring a guy in like Cora that can relate to the whole structure. It makes a lot of sense. It's just similar to the Nats. You're going to have to win now, because if you don't, they're going to have to keep moving parts, and it's going to be very, very interesting. Talking about a team that is on full rebuild mode, as we saw them trading as many people as they could, including the ALCS MVP, the Tigers hired Ron Gardenhire. I'm a big fan of this move for a lot of reasons, but I want to hear your thoughts on this, because I think Gardenhire, I think he kind of got a raw deal at the end in Minnesota. But what's your thoughts on Gardenhire?
Yeah, obviously a little bit close to the teams I follow since I'm a White Sox fan, so I've had a lot of experience with a lot of matchups with the Ron Gardenhire-led teams. He's kind of the opposite of what we just talked about with Corey. He's a much older guy, very established. It's kind of an interesting move because in a rebuild, you don't necessarily see, guys with a ton of experience. Usually you kind of let somebody, get some experience underneath them because there's no pressure in the Detroit Tigers situation. So there is that, but I can also see them wanting somebody to really kind of establish a winning culture. Gardenhire had a lot of success in Minnesota. I agree with you that he got a bit of a raw deal because I think really it was mostly the front office that was kind of, really let down Gardenhire in his last years over in Minnesota. So it's good for him to get another chance, and he certainly knows the AL Central very, very well. But yeah, that team is. There's not a whole lot of signs of hope, and the Indians are going to be very good for quite a while here, and I'm hoping the White Sox will be good for a while here, and the Tigers. Of course, we're going to be talking about the Astros rebuild here in a little bit, how they went from all the way from the bottom cellar. I think that's where the Tigers have to come out from, and it's you think about it like, will a senior citizen be really willing to deal with the growing pains of a rebuilding franchise? There might be a sitcom in the future of how well this is going to go.
TV show Coach, but for baseball.
Right.
It's interesting. So I like the fact that, like you said, he's familiar with the division. To me, he's also familiar with coaching teams that aren't expected to do great. Because the Twins for so many years, he had some really good Twins teams. We know that, but he also had a lot of Twins teams that were in kind of rebuild / we're just trying to hang around modes and do things. So he knows how to work with it all. But I think the goal for him is, like you said, you either need to bring in an older guy like Ron with experience, or you need the young guy. And I think the Tigers are so many years away. They're not like your White Sox. So I think it's real close. Another year or two, and they're going to be making things really interesting. The Tigers, like you said, they still need to make a few more moves. That they can't really just get rid of money, because Cabrera and Vmart and all those guys still cost a lot of money, and no one's just going to take that. They made some good steps in the right direction, picking up players. Now it's just a matter of continuing that, redoing the whole rotation. So I think Gardenhire at least can, buy the time for the team to keep building. That's what I thought it was a decent move. Let's do a couple quick hits for you, because Mo and I have given our predictions. I just wanted to hear yours. Who's your AL and NL Cy Young Award winners?
So this one hits me a little close to my heart for the AL, because I'm still a Chris Sale fan, even though he plays in a different uniform. And, of course, I always wanted him to win the Cy Young with what he did in the Chicago White Sox, and was definitely very biased with him, ending up in the top 5 so many years in a row. This year, I thought he had it in the bag all season. I mean, around August, I thought there was no chance that anybody could get him. But unfortunately, what happens to Chris Sale every year happened again, and he kind of did fade down the stretch, and Corey Kluber really hit a stride during the stretch. I want to say mid-September, I still was saying, no, the games that Kluber missed, you just can't put him above Sale. But I think I ultimately ended up, Kluber just passed him by a hair. So I picked Corey Kluber for my AL Cy Young. The NL Cy Young, not much of a discussion for me. I think Max Scherzer pretty much almost had it coast to coast. I thought he was the best pitcher in the National League all season long. Of course, obviously that was helped by the Kershaw injury, but I got Scherzer winning the back-to-back. Yep,
that's exactly where I am on that one, and I agree. Going into September, it was Sales the whole time, and what Kluber did to basically put the Indians on his back was impressive. It was eight plus innings every time out. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
AL, NL, MVP. I'm not going to ask Rookie of the Year because that's pretty obvious.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess, and I'll make it easy too because my AL MVP is the Rookie of the Year. I would go with Judge. It's it's obviously a little bit difficult saying it now because this is a regular season award, and that's what we have to remember when we're doing these kinds of discussions heading into the World Series. Obviously, Jose Altuve was very, very good all playoffs long, and Judge struggled a little bit. But I just think that Judge just made such a huge difference. I think that, most valuable player, I don't love the award just because it's so vague and it's so gray about what you think the word valuable means or what you think the award actually essentially stands for. But I just thought the Yankees kind of went as Judge went this year. When he was hot, they were hot. So ultimately, I went with him, but in a very close battle. For NL is very close, and there's a ton of names you could throw in there. I ultimately went with Paul Goldschmidt. I just think that he had a very solid year all year long. Obviously, the Diamondbacks were a very cool story, bouncing back from a down year in 2016. And he was their best player. Even when JD Martinez came over, I still thought that was Goldschmidt's team. But there are so many more possibilities that anyone could say that I could certainly agree with. But I just kind of wanted to plant my flag in one place, and that's where I ended up.
Yeah, I went Goldie. I was waving the Goldie flag for the last few months of the year. Then I went Altuve, but I can't argue either side of that. I can't wait to see the real vote come out because it's literally – you can't argue with either guy. You can't. And it's so just a toss-up right now. I have no clue. It seems like there's more Altuve, but you never know. It depends on where you look. And then you said with the MVP in the National League, there's probably 8 guys that would not shock you if they named him. Like, it's ridiculous. Yeah. Absolutely ridiculous. So that'll be cool. Now let's get into some playoffs talk. We'll start with the ALCS. It went 7 games, and it was pretty awesome. It was home teams holding court. But the way they did it was it was different, but it was playoff different, if that makes any sense. It was like the pitching moves, the great pitching, and the clutch hitting for this team and that, and it was just really, really crazy. Do you have any just initial thoughts on the overall series, and we'll break it down a little more?
Yeah, it was weird, and we can definitely put to bed any talk about that momentum means anything because it was just home field was really what carried the day. Is interesting enough because I've always been an advocate that a home field doesn't really make that big of much of a difference in baseball, but it certainly made a little bit of a difference in this one. And I wrote an article at the beginning. I wrote it, I think, after Game 1 that I thought both stadiums would really kind of and really it did. I know I'm probably one of the only ones who really kind of breaks down kind of the nerdy stuff with the stadiums, but both Astros, Minute Maid Park, and Yankee Stadium have very interesting dimensions. And we even saw like the Todd Frazier home run off of Charlie Morton in, I think it was Game 4, that he kind of just flicked his wrist over that right field fence. That was really ugly swing, but with how close that right field wall is, it became a 3-run homer, and it really it did change the complexion of the entire series at that point. The Astros were kind of in control, and then the Yankees, if I'm right with Game 4, they tied it up, and then of course they went on to take the lead in the series the next game. But then we saw at Minute Maid, it seemed like every fly ball, both teams really hit it in the deep center field. And with Minute Maid Park, like 415 there in deep center, all of those balls were just right to the wall scraping that if there was played in a different park, we would have seen a lot of home runs. I mean, Todd Frazier had that one late in Game 6 off Verlander that kind of looked like it was a home run, and Springer caught it right by the wall. Springer had that really awesome jumping catch in Game 7. So, my nerdiness brought me to how much the stadiums had a part in this series.
Well, it's wild because even that Altuve homer into the Crawford boxes, they showed on, I forget, I think it might have been Gianella. He had the picture, no other stadium that goes out.
Right?
0. It's like a 0% chance of home run. It's wild because if that doesn't go out, like you said, everything was such momentum driven. It's crazy. And I like that you said the home field thing, because I've always been an advocate playing baseball my whole life that home field, out of all the sports, it's the least important in baseball to me. Like I get it, the home team gets last ups, and I get all that, but you can give a team home team rights in a different ballpark, and they'll get the same result, in my opinion. Yeah. I've always felt that way, but you did see an atmosphere, and I've noticed it in Arizona, you noticed it in Houston, and certain stadiums. It does get a little raucous in those places, more than you'd see at a lot of ballparks. So there may be something mentally with these guys. I don't know. I just never thought it mattered as much. But
Carlos Beltran, who's played in 50 playoff games. He said that Yankee Stadium was the loudest thing he's ever heard in his life. So, I mean, that certainly has to have some impact. I don't know how much though. But like you said, I mean, it's just weird that it worked out that way. That home field carried the day.
Yeah, you just don't see it very often. Usually there's a lot of splitting going on and other stuff. Let's talk Altuve. He had the big last couple. We had a big series. The big hits in the last couple games at home. You had, Keuchel and Verlander just dominating on the mound, except not Keuchel's second start, but Verlander just amazing what Verlander did in those 2 games. Amazing. Everybody knows what they did. What other Astros kind of stood out that, you can go McCullers, you can go a lot of angles. Who stood out to you the most that kind of out of nowhere impact?
Yeah, I mean, the Verlander thing is definitely so interesting just because of how late that move was made and how big of an impact it had. The Astros certainly would not be in the World Series without him. Brian McCann, let's talk about him. I mean, I think that he did a great job with that pitching staff. And obviously the joke that was made all over the internet is that the Yankees were paying him to beat them in the ALCS, which is of course true. The Yankees, of course, made the decision to go with Gary Sanchez this year. And really, I guess I kind of just walked into that argument. But the way you can juxtapose impact and Gary Sanchez's impact in a negative way, I'm of course speaking specifically on defense, and really it came down to a couple tag plays. I mean, game 2 was won because Gary Sanchez totally muffed that. You can blame Judge for maybe taking a little bit of time. Didi threw that right on the money. Sanchez has got to make that tag. And then, of course, the huge play in game 7 was Brian McCann making the tag off of the Alex Bregman play. How many catchers make that play? I don't really think. I mean, maybe like 3. I mean, I don't. That play's made him 1 out of 100 times. Such a great play. I think McCann had such a huge impact, and he had a huge hit in the game as well. McCann is not my favorite player in MLB just because of his old fuddy-duddy ways and the way he likes to police the game. But he earned all of our respect in this series, and really showed up. And this Astros team is so many young players, and even Altuve is still pretty young. Correa, Springer, Gurriel, Bregman. But it was a veteran really making a huge impact, and that was Brian McCann.
And that's a good call on McCann because, like you said, it's such a young team. And he's just that guy, for most of the season, no one talked about Brian McCann. He was just another piece of the lineup. But you have to know on a team like that with all that youth, he's doing so much that no one's seeing to keep those guys going in the right direction and working the pitching staff. Because before Verlander got there, Keuchel was hurt most of the year. It was a lot of young guys or guys that have never proven themselves. Morton, everybody wondered, how did Morton get paid to do this? And, you got McCann working with guys. Gaddis caught a lot too, I get it, but McCann is the catcher. He's the defensive mind that catches. And that Bregman play, just Bregman's nerve to throw it and then throw it on the money. I would love to ask him, did you mean to throw it at his ankle? Because usually when you do that, it's because it slipped or something. Mechanically went wrong. And then like you said I jumped off my couch and started yelling, and my wife wondered what was going on in the living room. When you make that throw to that catch to hang on to it to make that tag, especially in an era where you can't block the plate anymore.
Yeah. That
is an amazing play. I know it was talked about a lot. I still don't think it was talked about enough. That play, insane. If he doesn't make the play, what is it, 2-1 or 1-1? It's a whole different animal. It's
I think
crazy.
that would have tied it. Yeah. Yeah, there was just that moment when he fields the ball. You kind of, I think, probably in both of our heads, I'll speak for you, is that you're kind of like, okay, is he going to try to turn two or is he going to just have to go to first base? Never in a million years did I think he was going to throw home. I mean, he wasn't playing that far in, and it didn't seem like the timing would ever have allowed that play to happen. And it had to happen just the exact way he did. He had to throw it at his ankle. And yeah, we saw the big play where Contreras blocked the plate in the NLC or NLDS and got called out for it. And the fact that, I mean, you brought up a good point. It's so much harder in 2017 to make that play that McCann did. And he got spiked in the arm too. Then to hold on to the ball, unbelievable. And I don't know if you read this, but there was a play like a couple weeks right before the end of the season that was like the exact same situation. Where Bregman, it was a runner on first, one out, I think. Runners on the corners, one out, and a ground ball went to Bregman, and he tried to turn two. He only got the out at the second, and the run scored, and the Astros lost. And he said that play ran through his mind, and I guess they even talked about it, after it happened. And Hinch said in the postseason, you got to throw that ball home. So that's kind of where that stems from a little bit. But yeah, I mean, Bregman, a rookie, to make that play. Still, I don't care if his manager told him to do it. It still took a lot of balls to get it done.
Yeah, the stones on that kid. That's all I can say, because I thought for sure he's going to two to get at least the lead runner, limit the damage. Because it's one of those, if you don't get that out, you're going to get crucified. Because now you got no outs. They scored the run. It was insane.
They'd have to go to their pen because Morton was already kind of on the ropes there. They would have had to bring in a reliever. That changed the entire inning because then, Morton got the last out and the next batter and kept the shutout. Yeah, that whole game changes. And maybe we're talking about the Yankees in the World Series.
That was wild. Well, we'll talk about the guy that he pitched an amazing game 4, and they didn't get the win, unfortunately. But then he came out of the bullpen for 4 outstanding innings, and all anyone wants to talk about is his curveball he threw over 60% of the time. But Lance McCullers was a guy that I loved going into the season. I thought he had tremendous stuff. He just couldn't stay healthy. And he was really rocky when he came back from his injury. But what he did in this ALCS was nothing short like amazing. It's overshadowed by Verlander, but what he did was outstanding. What is your take on McCullers transitioning to the bullpen, 4 innings, the whole thing was amazing?
I remember the Astros beat reporter, and I won't call her out, but she said that she didn't want McCullers on the playoff roster because he was so bad, to close up the season, that he didn't deserve a spot on the roster, and even like fires, put him over him. So that's where we started, and I guess in her, in respect to her, she was certainly right, and you brought it up. He was not very good when he came back from injury. And it's hard to – you only have so many spots on a playoff roster that, if you can't count on a guy to get you the innings that you count on him, you do have to make a tough decision. But so that's part of the story that makes this really cool. The fact that he was on short rest, the interviews after the game in Game 7 where McCullers really wanted to start the game, and he was begging to start, and Hinch said, how about I let you close? And he said, whatever you want me to do. And the fact that we got a 4-inning save, and I want to rewind here a second, get your input here too. My thing that going into that game, everyone was writing on Fangraphs, there was an article or two about what exactly should the Astros setup be for who should pitch when, how many innings should Morton go, do they go to Keuchel? Do they go to Verlander? Kind of just ignoring anybody in the actual bullpen. And I kind of was always thinking to myself, if they're going to Keuchel and Verlander in this game, I don't think it's going to end up working out for the Astros because, obviously this is a big thing that's going on in the playoffs, and it happened a couple years ago, and it keeps happening where we're bringing starters out of the bullpen. I don't love it. I don't think these guys are very used to it, especially when they bring them in the middle of the innings with runners on base. Sorry. It doesn't work out. It seems like it backfires more than often. So going into this game, I was just like, no, I don't know about this Keuchel and Verlander thing. And then for them to only use 2 pitchers and use Morton and McCullers, I was shocked. But I thought that was that was a winning recipe that I don't think anyone ever saw coming. But really, when you think about it, of course, hindsight, yeah, that was the way to win that game. And I think that was the way they had to win the game. So kudos to both those guys for really probably pitching both of the best games of their lives and the biggest stage that they've ever been on. Just really cool. And moving forward, I'm interested to see what do you do with McCullers in the World Series? Do you use him in a relief role, because that's a huge weapon.
Yeah, a couple things with that is the whole starters coming in relief in the postseason. I'm not a big fan of it either, especially, and I preached this when Verlander came in and other guys earlier in the DS, not in the middle of an inning. Do not do it. They're creatures of habit. Do not bring them in the middle of an inning. But when you have a weapon like McCullers, and it's really weird because you have a bullpen with Davinsky and a couple others, Giles and company, they were pretty good during the regular season. Like, some are really good, some are kind of mediocre, but as a whole, a decent bullpen. And sure, they've struggled in the postseason, but everything that was coming out for like the last few games, if you're a reliever down there, you got to be thinking, man,
yeah,
like, do I even want to come in? Because now mentally you don't want to go to them now. It was just a roller coaster going on. So I think the idea of going to McCullers first, because what happened is the best case scenario, obviously. But you have a guy can give you a few innings, worst case scenario, and then you can set it up with your setup man, like a Harris or a Davinsky late, and then go to Giles. You eliminate the middle. But it's almost like you saw what he did in Game 4. You saw what he did out of the bullpen. And, Verlander, Keuchel, Morton, I have no problem 1, 2, 3. It depends on, do you want to bring Verlander back for Game 4, or do you need McCullers in the rotation? I would love to have that weapon out of the pen for multiple innings. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Let's talk Justin Verlander. You mentioned how he came over with about 10 seconds left on the trade deadline, and he has been nothing short of amazing for the Astros. But in the ALCS, complete game, strikeouts out the rear end, they couldn't score a run off of him. This guy, he's earned every dollar and every prospect that was traded, and they've won this deal already, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the Astros are, they've been very stubborn about their ways, and Luno has really kind of wanted to cuddle those prospects all the way, and obviously a lot of them are up now. But, I was saying since last season ended that they needed another starter. I really thought they were going to be where Jose Quintana ended up. As a White Sox fan, I just was always kind of eyeing those Astros prospects just because I figured that was going to be the match. It always made the most sense. And then they didn't make any deals by the July 31st deadline. Of course, we got the comments from Keuchel and others. And then it didn't look like they were going to do anything. I went to bed on August 31st, not even knowing that the deal was in place. And it just changed everything. It changed, everyone's feelings about how the American League was going to play out. I definitely wanted to see an Indians-Astros American League Championship Series. I mean, of course, I'm certainly not complaining because what we got was very good as well. But it just made a whole lot more sense and made that team complete. Yeah, those prospects might bite them in the long run, but they've gotten everything that they needed out of Verlander, and they still have him moving forward for a little bit. Just kind of similar to the Chapman deal last year for the Cubs. I mean, it's going to burn them in the end. Gleyber Torres is going to be very good for the Yankees, but the Cubs won a World Series, and if the Astros win a World Series with Justin Verlander possibly pitching, in a Game 7, then it's worth any prospect there and any dollar figure that they needed to pay up.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal move. We've been yelling all year that the Astros need another pitcher. They need another pitcher. They need another pitcher. When, like you said, the July 31st deadline, they go and get Francisco Liriano to pitch out of the bullpen. You're like, what in the world are you doing? Like, what? And, when they pulled that deal off, it was perfect. Let's talk Yankees real quick. I don't think they should hang their head. I know I put that down there. I'm pretty sure you don't think they should either by any means. I think they're like 2 years early still. I thought they'd contend next year and really develop another year or two from now. Because they were that close, and like we talked about with the DS series, it's just one little move. What do you think they could have done differently to potentially be in the World Series now?
Sonny Gray didn't really work out. I guess they could have, they were in on the Quintana deal as well. That was reported that they almost landed Quintana from the White Sox. That could have been, it could have certainly been a lot different. Quintana pinched a lot better down the stretch. I know that he had that really rough game to end the Cubs season, but who knows what he could have done? Especially if you replace what what Sonny Gray did, and that wasn't all that much. Nah, I mean the Yankees, like you said, they're ahead of schedule. They played a incredibly good team in the Houston Astros. They took them down to the last game in a very close game. There's not a whole lot much else I could think of. I think Girardi did a great job. Minus the hiccup in the ALDS, which ultimately they didn't have to pay for. I think if the Yankees don't bring him back, we can bring back our discussion with Dusty Baker. If the Yankees don't bring back Joe Girardi for not winning this series against Houston, now that would be ridiculous, and that I would be completely against. I think Joe Girardi is a very good manager, and I think that he deserves to be there, and he did. Of course, he made mistakes. All these managers make mistakes, but Girardi certainly did more good than bad. There's nothing that really pops out of my head that I think that they could have done to win the series. I just think they lost to the better team.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% correct there. We both said that they're a few years away. Do you think it happened? When do you think it happens for the Yankees? Not winning it all, but when do you think they really become that dominant team like we think they're going to be?
You said 2 years away. I think they might actually be ready to go next year, especially if Torres had the Tommy John, right? Or I believe. So I mean, obviously that's not that big of a deal for a position player. That guy's a stud. I don't know what they do in the infield necessarily because they have Gregorius and Castro, but you could trade. I mean, trading Gregorius is kind of on the table, and I think that he had such a good postseason, and he had a great season. He's probably got a lot of value that if they wanted to make a move for a starting pitcher, they could. Tanaka can opt out, so that'll be interesting what they do. CC's a free agent, but he's also obviously towards the end of the line here. But they got some good pitching prospects on the way up too. Sonny Gray maybe can bounce back after a year and get them in their offseason program. Bringing back our Cora conversation, that Yankees-Red Sox rivalry is back. I mean, this is what we grew up with. I think that this is what we're going to see now for the next couple years here, at least. A very strong rivalry. Yankees-Red Sox are both going to be very, very good battling for the AL East, and it could go either way. With the multiple wild card, I expect both of them to be in the postseason for the next couple years.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right. It might only be 1 year. They are very, very close. The Torres deal was non-throwing arm and everything, so that shouldn't be a massive problem. And I think a lot of it will be the pitching. How do the young guys come up that are just awesome? What do they do to fill holes? They are very, very, very close. And you made a good point. Didi had a year no one thought Didi would have. Like, no one thought he was – like, they knew he was
cleanup.
bad.
He was batting cleanup. Didi Gregorius was batting cleanup for the New York Yankees.
Yeah, he was probably third on the team in homers, just behind Judge and Sanchez. It was ridiculous what he did, and you're never going to have his value higher right now. So this might be the time to do it. Let's go NLCS. Dodgers and the Cubbies. Dodgers just looked impressive, or were the Cubs that bad? What are your thoughts on that one?
I'd probably lean towards the Dodgers being impressive more than the Cubs not. But I will say that the Cubs bullpen was really just there was no one there. And you probably could question a couple things, but I mean they did play the 5-game series. They had a good fly across country right after winning Game 5. Played 2 days later. Not trying to make too many mistakes or so many excuses. I'm sorry. I guess the one thing that I thought was kind of weird that I was a little against it is that in that Game 1 when they pitched Quintana on what was a short rest, even though he only threw 12 pitches in relief a couple days prior, just because I think when you're going against Clayton Kershaw in Game 1, you're probably assuming you're going to lose anyway. I know you don't want to boot any games in a championship series, but I would have probably started John Lackey in Game 1 and gave Quintana and Lester another day. And I think that would have been a much, much better option than using John Lackey as your closer. So there's that as well. Those first two games were extremely close. I mean, they could have gone either way in LA, and that was against Kershaw and Hill, both pitching lights out. So that series could have gone a little bit different, especially if the Cubs had anybody in the bullpen. But the Dodgers completely shut the Cubs' bats down, as did the Nats, by the way. The Cubs didn't hit all postseason. They got some lucky breaks against the Washington, and they really got absolutely no breaks against LA. But sometimes that's what happens. But it certainly didn't even look close on paper or even watching the games. This Dodgers team is a behemoth, and that was without Corey Seager. Wow.
Yeah, without Corey Seager, that part people still don't mention enough. That's crazy that they're doing that without the former Rookie of the Year, almost MVP last season. And they just looked so much better. I know you said the first two games were close, and they were. They really were. But it was almost just like a war of attrition. Okay, we'll get to your bullpen, and then we'll take care of business. Because a Cubs team that I thought their bullpen was actually pretty good during the season, I don't know what happened to it in the playoffs. Like, nothing worked. You walked the pitcher with the bases loaded. It was unbelievable. But more importantly than just the bullpen, like you said, is their bats disappeared. Like, just gone. One of the best offenses in all of baseball, just gone. Nothing. Just it was really, really weird to see such a great team just kind of that has the experience. You can't even blame it on, butterflies or lack of experience. So I thought that was really, really odd from the Cubs. But give the Dodgers all the credit in the world, and trust me, that really hurts for me to say. But give them all the credit in the world. They played outstanding. They had the pitch. Like, Darvish we talked Verlander. Darvish is earning his trade value. He's pitched great in the postseason. And, you get what the Cubs never had was clutchness. The Dodgers going to get 3 homers from Kiki frickin' Hernandez. Like, they have these guys just showing up and making it happen. And
you look at their lineup like every day, and it's kind of like this isn't all that scary. I mean, really, you get past Turner. Of course, Bellinger's able to hit a bomb at any point, but especially without Corey Seager in the lineup, you just look at it and you're like, this isn't that scary. But they got it done.
Yeah, it's impressive. Kershaw, he's been really good this postseason. I've said the playoff Kershaw curse, or whatever you want to call it's gone. What are your thoughts? Is he still an issue, or are people need to just let that go?
Yeah, I think definitely people should let it go. I think a thing can exist. I would say David Price is the one that always kind of hits me, that I think that there is maybe something there, but obviously you can't really tell when you only get so many chances to see him. Kershaw's pitched great in the playoffs. In years past, he's had some bad playoff starts. But the thing is here, and I know that a lot of people have poured a lot of research and go out and just Google it, but, Kershaw, a lot of the times that he has failed in the playoffs, it's been like the 6th or 7th inning because the Dodgers have nowhere else to go. Well, that's not going to happen in this World Series. If Kershaw has any signs of struggle, there are multiple guys that can come out of that pen and bail him out. So Kershaw's going to be as great as he can. The thing that we saw, with Verlander in Game 6 and Morton in Game 7 and McCullers in Game 7 is they're pitching like there is no tomorrow. And when they do that, they can pitch the best games of their life, as I mentioned before. Kershaw can do that too. Even if he does end up pitching 3 times in this World Series, he can go as hard as he wants, 4 or 5 innings, and still feel that there's enough guys in that bullpen that can get the remainder of the outs taken care of. But this Astros team is a very, very good offense, and they can be very streaky. If the Astros do hit Kershaw, I'm not going to say I'm going to be surprised, and I'm certainly not going to say like, there's the playoff Kershaw that we all know. No, this is a very good offense, and if Kershaw does struggle, it's because he's playing a very good offense. But I'd probably, if I had to put my money on it, I'm putting my money on Kershaw.
Yeah, and that was well said. Is people forget that you're playing playoff caliber teams on the other side. So it's not like he's playing, the Rays circa 2001 or something. Like, we're getting the best of the best. So by no means is this going to be a oh no, he's horrible outing, which I don't think we're going to get anyways. But I'm looking forward to it. Definitely wait for him to let us know who Kershaw really is right now. Yasiel Puig. People love him. People hate him. I used to just despise him for his lack of hustle and all his attitude. I really enjoy this Yasiel Puig that's having fun. He's playing good baseball. He's hustling. He was batting cleanup for the Dodgers. It's a whole different guy, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on, quote-unquote, the new Yasiel Puig?
I, for the most part, have always loved him. Not to bring a fantasy story up, but I had him in a keeper league for 4 straight years. Pretty much his first 4 years in the league, and that was a roller coaster. You know, he had to ride my bench a lot because he got in those slumps. But I had a guy ask me a question about this over the weekend about, you know, how much I believe in this Dodgers lineup. You know, I know you don't have it on your the schedule to talk about, but you know, Chris Taylor kind of came out of nowhere, and Cody Bellinger's obviously a rookie, and then Yasiel Puig is really you know on one of the best stretches of his MLB career. How much do I think this can sustain? And the point is, it obviously it doesn't have to sustain that much longer. But I'm going to bet on what is currently occurring, and then I can talk about next year, you know, over the offseason on whether these guys are going to be the same players next year. But Chris Taylor and Yasiel Puig are both playing incredible baseball right now, and I don't expect them to stop. You know, we talk about, you know, like you just brought up, there's good players on the other side too. Verlander and Keuchel, you know, certainly could probably get the best of them, but you know, Brad Peacock versus Yasiel Puig, you know, I got my money on Puig. You know, I think that this Dodgers lineup, you know, we talked about there's not big names, but they are all playing very good, and I don't expect them to just kind of halt. But I made the point earlier that momentum, it doesn't exist, so anything could turn on a dime. But no, I think Puig certainly focus is a big thing. You mentioned that when you didn't like him, I think he is extremely focused right now, and really has been all season. Has been since he got sent down last year. So kudos. I think the baseball is better with Yasiel Puig having fun out there, and the fact that he's in the World Series is a treat for everyone.
Yeah, I was telling a Dodger friend of mine the other day about how I've grown my love back from, because I'm with you. I still have him on a dynasty team. I picked him up when he came into the league. He's still on my roster. I can't quit Puig. But I was telling him I love this because I remember back to the World Baseball Classic when, you know, bat flips were going on there, and Ian Kinsler had to play the old curmudgeon of, no, that's not how you play baseball. And I was at the point of, okay, you don't do it to offend your opponent. But if you're doing it to have fun and you're doing it with your team, what is wrong with having a little fun and showing a little, like the little kid that's inside of you playing baseball once in a while? I don't see what the problem was, and Puig is doing that right now. When he's running around sticking his tongue out, or he's licking his bat, or he's running, just doing Puig things. Like, many might think it's stupid, but I think, like you said, it is great for baseball. Kids are going to love it. Fans are going to love it. He's not hurting anyone. He's just having fun playing baseball. And in reality, we're all supposed to have fun playing and watching baseball. So I think it's great, and I hope he keeps playing well. Like you said, it's not just the postseason. He's having a great season overall, so it's great to see. Let's talk one more thing on the Dodgers. We've already hit on like 12 guys that have impacted the postseason. Who is their postseason MVP? If you had to pick one guy.
It's hard. I'm probably going to go Kenley Jansen, just because is there a weapon out there in baseball that you would rather have in the postseason? I mean, he's unhittable. He's absolutely unhittable. He can pitch multiple innings, which is so huge. You know, we talked about some pitchers not being comfortable coming in the middle of the inning. Does not matter. If there's a bases loaded against Jose Altuve, we're going to see Kenley Jansen coming out of that pen. And there is, I mean, how many pitchers would you trust in that situation? How many pitchers would you give the advantage to the pitcher over Jose Altuve, who's probably got the best hand-eye coordination I think I've ever seen? I think I would actually give that to Kenley, and I think just that statement alone says that he is the ultimate MVP for the Dodgers right now.
Yeah, I can't hate on that at all. I'm hoping, as a baseball fan, we get to Game 7, and you get Jansen in there for at least multiple innings of just tight baseball with him on the mound. It'd be perfect. It'd be great baseball. Let's talk a couple Cubs things real quick. We mentioned their offense fell apart. Their bullpen fell apart. Do you think maybe they're just worn out, or what changes need to be made in the offseason to keep the Cubs where they are? Because they still have a lot of great pieces in play, but what do they need to do? Because Arrieta might be gone. There's a lot of things leaving too.
Yeah, and they just fired their pitching coach, which was a surprise. I was listening to Chicago Sports Radio today, and the beat reporter was very surprised. That was not expected. Bosio is incredibly respected, and he's done some great stuff in Chicago, so that was a surprise. So that's the fall guy. They walked everyone, though. I mean, really, towards the end of the season, their bullpen was walking everyone. Their whole pitching staff was walking everyone. They just didn't have the control. I've heard a very, very good argument for one of these for a possibility is that it's a different catcher duo that they had last year. They had Miggy Montero and David Ross last year, who were both very, very good framers, and they went to Wilson Contreras this year. They dumped Montero early on in the season. Had Alex Avila. Neither of those guys are really great framers. So that could be a big thing, especially when you see your walk rate sky up that much. That could be a big thing, that your catcher's not stealing as many strikes. The other thing that I wanted to actually talk to you about, though, is one thing that I found interesting. I think this is basically stemmed from what we saw from Andrew Miller coming out of last year's postseason, is that a lot of the talk going into the season was, are teams able to use Andrew Miller like that for an entire regular season? And what we saw this season is a guy we talked about before, Chris Davinsky, was really kind of the ultimate experiment in that. The Astros really used him all the time for 3 innings, 4 innings. They used him as a closer. They used him in high leverage situations. And it looks like what is the situation is he burnt out. The Cubs kind of had a similar situation with Mike Montgomery. Mike Montgomery was very good in last year's playoffs. He made the last out. That's a fun fact, trivia fact that I don't think a lot of people remember. Was Mike Montgomery pitched in the last out of the World Series last year? But he was a guy that the Cubs used a ton this year, surpassed all of his inning maximums. He was a starting pitcher. He was a relief pitcher. And he kind of burned out at the end of the year. He was definitely probably the worst guy in that pen in the postseason, which was totally the opposite from last year. So my question to you is, I mean, are we going to kind of have to revert the other way that, you can't extend these guys that haven't been extended that much before and expect them to be awesome all the way throughout the season, and usually expecting to go into the postseason? You're not going to be able to use that guy in October.
I don't want to say you can't, but they have to do it, if that makes sense. Like, if you want him in the postseason in that role, maybe wait till the All-Star break to start pushing him into that role. Don't do it all year long, because, like you said, these guys aren't starters anymore. They aren't built for this workload, as they say. You even saw Archie Bradley, who stepped into that role this year. About mid-season, maybe August, he started falling apart, and he came back in the postseason. He had a run where he was not the guy that was dominating. You even saw Roldis Chapman. He was having a pretty rough year from the workload he had last postseason. There is a lot to be said about that. There is a ton to be said about that. And they need to look into it more, because Davinsky, the Astros are feeling that pain right now. Wouldn't they love to have a guy that could go 2 or 3 innings without a blink of an eye the way he was earlier this year? Yeah. And you mentioned Montgomery. And a lot of teams were tinkering with it, but none to great success like those guys were. But I don't want to say it goes away, because it's funny you asked that. It's kind of a discussion we had early in the season. Are more teams going to try to build for that? I was saying with Lucas Giolito from you guys, when he was really struggling in the minors, is he a guy that's good for one trip through the rotation? Would he be a good 2 to 3 inning Davinsky type? Is that something he could develop? I don't want to say it's done, because it is the way baseball's going with pitch counts, and you can only go, if it's 100 pitches and it's 5 innings, that's all you're going now. You can't keep going to guys to go 1 inning each in the bullpen. That's just not possible.
Right.
So
I think Davinsky was going 3 innings in April, I believe. I I remember that right off the bat because I bring up fantasy. I picked him up in fantasy because he was such an awesome weapon. He had these 3-inning stints, and he was obviously just sitting there on the free agent wire, and he was all strikeouts. He'd pitch 3 innings, he gets 6-7 strikeouts, and he was great. 0 ERA, and they did that right from the bat. And now look what they can't throw. They can't put him in a game. they can't throw him here in October.
Yeah, it's it sucks for the fans because you know what weapon it can be and you can't use them. But B, it all comes down. We're going to see probably stuff in spring training. Watch a guy like Davinsky barely even get used or something. Like let his spring training be a couple innings early in the year, like in April, as he develops, and then let him extend it. I don't know. They're going to have to figure out something, but I think it's a huge weapon that more teams are going to try to use. They just have to figure out how to use it. Let's talk World Series. The Fall Classic is upon us, which is awesome and sad at the same time because that means the season is almost over. But it's a great time of the year. Let's start with the Dodgers real quick. The rosters are supposed to be released today. This is Monday. We're recording this, obviously. I never saw anything.
No.
Do the Dodgers need Corey Seager? Well, we saw they didn't need him in the NLCS. This might be a different animal, especially with the DH for a few games. Do they need Corey Seager?
I think so, and I think they're going to have him anyway. I was seeing that they were playing a simulator game, and he was playing. Guess it's that he can't really bend over, which I think might be a bigger deal on defense than offense. So I'm wondering if he will be a guy that is taken out late in games. But it'll be interesting what Roberts does here. He's very, very intelligent, and if Seager's not 100%, do you still have him bat? On the top of the order, second, third, or fourth, if he can't give everything here. But I think the Astros are going to be a much bigger challenge than the Cubs were for the Dodgers. So I think that they need all hands on deck here. I know we'll get into predictions in a second, but I think this will be a close series. So I think that you want really your best player on the field, and I think they need him. I don't know if I'm willing to, I guess by saying that I need him, that I'm saying that they would lose without him. But I guess that is what I'm saying. I do think they need Corey Seager. How about you?
I do. I'm just super concerned though. Having like a 75% Corey Seager in your lineup, is that really going to be better than having an 100%? And it probably is offensively, but that defensive liability, because you're facing an Astros team that strikes out almost less than anybody in baseball, even against the great arms of the Yankees that are striking guys out, and they couldn't do it. Like they're going to put the ball in play a lot. You need your middle infielder, one of your captains, basically, to run the show. It's very, very risky. Like you said, he can't bend over. I was hearing reports that he initially injured it sliding, and he hasn't tried to slide again because he doesn't know if he can. That scares me. If I'm a guy going, I know Charlie Culberson, I know Kiki Hernandez, they're nowhere close to Corey Seager. I get it. But can you have that liability in the biggest games of your career? That's my biggest concern. Now, if you want to keep him on to DH when they're in the American League Park and pinch hit, I can get behind that a little more. But that's going to be really, really interesting to see how this plays out.
Are there rules against just DLing a guy in the middle of a series? Because I know that there was talk about what happened at the NLCS. They wouldn't be eligible to play the World Series, but can they do it in the World Series?
Well, what I heard today, and it brought back a memory because I know I've seen it before. I believe it was when Chase Utley got hurt on the slide or whatever it was.
Yeah.
If you get hurt mid-series, so if he starts and say he gets hurt so bad in game 1 or 2, you can remove him from your roster and bring someone else on, but then Seager can't come back the rest of the series. Sure. It can't. So I think they might try that. And, if it just goes wrong, it's like, okay, Culberson come back or whatever.
Well, I'm wondering the opposite. Like you said, having him as a DH might be a very good idea. So have somebody else, Charlie Culberson, for game 1 and game 2, fake an injury, and then have Seager ready for game 3. I'm sure that they could get in trouble for it, but I just didn't know if it was even possible.
So I don't hate it because you don't need Culberson. Kiki can play short, and so can Chris Taylor. So you have options. And like you said, Dave Roberts is a very, very smart coach. They're going to look at every possible angle. I have no doubt about that. So it'll be very interesting to see. I got another storyline for you. I heard it on StatCast came out with their World Series preview today. You probably listened to it because you're a StatCast podcast fan. This is the first time since 1970 200-win teams are playing each other in the World Series. I think that's wild, and I know we don't see a ton of 100-win teams anymore, but all year these were the two best teams. So could you have asked for much more, basically? Like, this is perfect.
This is absolutely perfect. I tweeted myself. I quote tweeted myself the other day because in about, I want to say it was like August, I said, just please, baseball gods, give me a healthy Astros versus a healthy Dodgers in the World Series this year. And lo and behold, that's what we got. And thank you, baseball gods, because this is everything that we we wanted. And I just hope it's many games, and I hope we get tight games. And I know you're on the West Coast. I don't, myself, I don't care if I have to stay up till midnight, 1 o'clock. I cannot wait for Dodgers Astros.
Yep, I'm already glued to this. One more stat before we get into the predictions. Basically, I wrote this down for you on that same podcast. Yulesky Gurriel has the highest exit velocity of anybody in the postseason, and the most hard hit balls, as you know, basically a barrel in theory, when you break it all down, of anybody in the postseason. So you were saying it earlier, how impressive he's been. You tweet out the barrel stuff all the time. How impressive has his barrels and everything been this postseason?
What's funny is he wasn't that great at the beginning of the year, and I remember I have a good Astros friend on Twitter, just a Twitter friend that is very, very smart baseball guy, and I just kind of asked him, like, do the Astros need to make an upgrade at first base? Because I'm looking at Gurriel, is this experiment really working? And he kind of said no, he's hitting the ball really hard, and he's getting it done, and we the Astros are in the right place with him. And then he kind of did start hitting barrels and definitely caught my eye. And I thought he was incredibly impressive all series. I thought he had like the best contact out of anyone except maybe Altuve, but and I tweeted out, and it's my pinned tweet right now, that just kind of a quick back of the napkin notes on each position by position, how the Astros and Dodgers fare against each other. And I just kind of put equal, then greater than, or less than, but I put for first base, I thought Gurriel and Bellinger are a wash. And I almost thought I was kind of downplaying Bellinger there because downplaying Gurriel because Bellinger is a rookie, and I know, well, they're both rookies, but Bellinger has just been this home run guy. I know that he's done a ton of. He hit 280, which is good as well. But Gurriel has just been so on fire. I do think that that's a pretty tight battle when you look at it. But one person did respond to me and say, like, are you sure that you would say Gurriel is as good as Bellinger? And really, with the way that he's hitting right now, I think he has to bring as much fear to those Dodgers pitchers as anyone, I guess, outside of Altuve. We'll still give him a neck up on Gurriel. But no, I've been very, very impressed with how hard that guy hits the ball.
All right, let's do some position gradings and then a prediction. Okay, who do you got? Astros starting pitchers versus Dodgers starting pitchers.
It's about equal because I do think that Verlander is so good. He's pitching, you mentioned it, as great as he can. Keuchel, the Dodgers do mash lefties. I'm a little worried about Keuchel, especially in that game one. But McCullers is kind of like this oddball, and I'm going to count him in as just starting pitching for this conversation. But since he would look so good, instead of Morton, how am I going to downplay those guys right now? Rich Hill, had this up and down season. Darvish is very, very good, and Alex Wood, I don't trust Alex Wood at all right now. So neither of these teams really go 4 deep, but 3 deep. They're both very, very solid. It's going to be a very nice matchup. I don't expect a whole lot of hitting.
What are your thoughts on Keuchel game 1, Verlander game 2? I know some base it on rest, but I'm pretty sure if you asked Verlander, can you go Tuesday night, he would have said yes. So what are your thoughts on this? Is it more well, Kershaw is a great pitcher. Let's not waste Verlander till game 2 and try to win that? Or is it – I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
That could play into it. I mentioned that I would have done that with the Cubs. But Dodgers can hit lefties, like I just said. It's not a great matchup on paper for Houston. Verlander's getting up there in age. You don't want to use him too much, but having Verlander for 1, 4, and 7 would have certainly been very, very appealing. I don't love it, but I think that's what I would have done as well.
Yeah, I get both sides of it. That's why I was wondering, because I like the idea of 1, 4, and 7, but then I like the idea of, okay, we know Kershaw's almost better than anybody in baseball. So let's save our bullet for the next game. At worst, we can even it up. Because people forget also the Astros hit lefties very, very well also. So you never know. I think this one's a lot easier than the starting pitcher debate. Relief pitchers, Astros versus Dodgers.
Yeah, this is where the series could turn, of course. Dodgers are great. Brandon Morrow, Tony Watson, Tony Cingrani, that trade kind of seemed like a throwaway, but both those guys got a lot better when they went over to LA. And then, of course, the ultimate weapon, Kenley Jansen. And the Astros, AJ Hinch is kind of in Joe Madden's seat where he was in the NLCS. He doesn't trust a whole lot of those guys. Even Giles, great when he was thrown in at garbage time. Brad Peacock and Joe Musgrove are these guys that, yeah, they were a little overextended this season. Will Harris and Chris Davinsky haven't been that great. No, it's Dodgers by a lot. I should probably just stop talking about this because there's no point.
Yeah, it's pretty loaded. The Brandon Morrow revolution has been our reinvention or whatever you want to call it. It's been pretty darn impressive. But the one that gets overlooked so much, it is almost the most impressive part to me. What Kenta Maeda has done out of that bullpen.
I forgot about him. Yeah.
He looks like a whole different pitcher. He comes in, he throws hard. He goes, I'm going for 1 inning, and it's a different guy to me, and that's impressive. Let's talk offense. Astros offense versus Dodgers offense. You said you put your pinned tweet on this. I think this is an interesting debate you could have on a lot of positions. I think the Astros take the edge on this, but what do you have?
Yeah, I think the Astros won more position battles. And especially with Seager at 75%, you definitely got to give the edge to Correa. Astros have the better offense. They have the best hitter out of all of them in Jose Altuve. And that lineup doesn't give you any pause. Of course, they are these first 2 games with the pitcher spot, but up and down, Brian McCann, Evan Gattis, like we talked about. I heard Jake Marisnik could come back, too. He's in kind of a fun little bonus prize that the Astros haven't had yet. They are debating putting him on the playoff roster. He's obviously a very good defender, but he can mash, too.
And he can hit lefties really well. And if you got 3 starters coming out left-handed, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What do you think they do with the no DH early? I know Gaddis crushes lefties, but McCann, the way he's controlling that staff, do you just put McCann out there versus Kershaw? Or because you need that defense if it's a close ball game?
Nah, I think McCann's out there game 1. Maybe game 4 they do something different without the off days in between, but McCann's rested. I fully expect him to be in the lineup tomorrow.
Okay, now some of the kind of hidden gems, Astros bench versus the Dodgers bench, like depth-wise, talent-wise, who do you have the edge to on this one?
Yeah, I think it's Carlos Beltran. He might have a little bit left. He has that playoff prestige that he's carried his whole entire career. Like I mentioned, the Marisnik thing could be very interesting. And then if you're looking at the Dodgers, Kike Hernandez is coming off a 3 home run game, so obviously he's on fire. But Yasmani Grandal is a good backup catcher as well. It's pretty even. I'll say there's not going to be a whole lot of there's not really like a speed guy coming off the bench for either team. No wild card like that. I don't think either team has a huge advantage over the other.
Yeah, no, that one's it was weird when I started looking at the bench. It doesn't stand out like other teams in recent years. There's nothing real big, like you said. And last but not least, we're talking managers. AJ Hinch and Dave Roberts. Who do you have?
I like Dave Roberts a lot. I think that he has done so much in so little time, and I think those players trust him, and they will do anything that he asks them to do. And I think that's going to give advantage. Hinch is a big numbers guy, and of course, I'm going to side with the numbers guy as well. But Hinch is no slouch. I give Roberts the edge, though.
Yeah, in this postseason alone, I see Roberts make some better moves than Hinch when it mattered. And I like Hinch a lot, but there's a couple times I really wonder what he's thinking out there. So I think I got to go with you on that one. Okay, here's where it is. Who do you have winning it, and in how many games?
I put Dodgers in 7 out there just because I think it's going to be tight. This is probably maybe more of a wish than anything that I am putting a lot of research in, just because I'd love to have another 7-game World Series like we did last year. That was so much fun, even if I had to watch the Cubs win. But I'm hoping for another 7. I think the Dodgers are a better team. I think the bullpen is the biggest standpoint that is going to make the difference. But Jose Altuve, Carlos Correa, George Springer, Evan Gattis, Brian McCann, Yulieski Gurriel, that's a lineup, Bubba, and it's going to be hard to get through. These guys are hitting. This is a lot different than the Cubs, and not to speak poorly on them, but the Cubs just weren't hitting. Astros are hitting. I fully expect them to keep hitting, or at least, giving a struggle, not striking out over and over again. You brought up this Astros lineup doesn't strike out, so they're going to be putting the ball in play at least, and that's something that we didn't see in the NLCS. So that's going to at least make the Dodgers work for it a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a big factor because, like you even said, some of those Cubs games were close, and I forgot about that. You mentioned it. I started looking back, like, well, yeah, that was really close until they screwed it up late. Yeah. So it'll be interesting. I have the Astros in 6. I would love 7 games. And I guess I do partially think the Dodgers might be the better team, but I think the Astros have the better team and more talent. To me is 2 different things, if that makes any sense. Like the Dodgers play as more of a deep team pitching wise, but the talent wise, if the Astros lineup just shows up, they can outdo it. Is basically what I'm saying. I'm tongue tied here, but that's where I'm going with that one. Who's your World Series MVP?
I'll stick with what I'm saying, Kenley Jansen.
Yeah. If the Dodgers win, it's definitely going to be him. And I'm going to go back. I think Verlander gets it again. If Verlander doesn't win, Chris get it. I know it seems simple because it just happened, but that seems like the auto one for me.
What doesn't that guy have?
Oh, no. He gets trophies at home, trophies on. It's just ridiculous. He had to take a picture holding the ALCS MVP trophy with his other trophy. It's ridiculous. He has it all. He has to show us pictures when they're on vacation on the beach. It's just, thanks, Justin. But, yeah, that's a whole other story. Oh, Casey, this is going to be fun, man. We have game 1 tomorrow night, hopefully 6 or 7 games. I'm good either way. Just give me some good baseball. That's all I care about. Any final words before we wrap it up? Casey?
You still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Any final words, and we'll wrap this up. No worries.
Final words. I think this has been a fantastic baseball season. But I think what's so great that happened with the postseason was that I think we got the best 8 teams. It's been a really fun tournament. We got those exciting Yankees kind of coming out of nowhere, upsetting the Indians, but still made for a great ALCS. The defending world champs went down early, but we still got the best team in really all of baseball in the World Series, which is always a great thing. My World Series prediction of the Indians versus the Cubs went completely wrong, but I'm still extremely happy. So that's all I got. I can't wait to, like you said, I can't wait for tomorrow.
Yeah, it should be awesome. Again, thanks for joining me. You can find Casey Boguslaw, Boguslaw, and check out the MLB Barrel account, all the good stuff Casey has going on. Really good stuff he does, and hopefully he'll find the new writing location soon because he's got really good stuff out there. But Casey, again, thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you so much for having me, Bubba.
No problem. Everybody, this is Around the Bases with Bubba and Mo / Casey tonight, episode 35 in the books. Catch you guys later.